I'm here in Los Angeles about to fly on Fiji Airways' best product, business class on the Airbus A350. To cut to the chase, I really love this flight, and I definitely recommend it. But seeing other reviews of the airline, it's clear that not everyone shares my high opinion of it. I've tried to think about why that might be the case. I think there's 5 annoyances that I observed on this trip. None of these really bothered me, but if they bother you, this might not be the best experience. If you find that they don't bother you, then I definitely recommend it. What's it like to fly on Fiji Business Class on the Airbus A350? Let's find out on this flight from Los Angeles to Nadi. I had just a 7-hour layover at LAX, which was more than enough time to leave the airport. I first walked over to the famous In-N-Out, which not only has tasty burgers, but is right on final approach to the airport, so it's a great place to plane spot. After that, I hopped on a rideshare to the beach for my final sunset in the US for a long time. This brings me to the first annoyance of Fiji Airways. They don't participate in TSA PreCheck, which is rather annoying, especially at an airport as busy as LAX. And at this hour, there wasn't even Clear open, so security was quite the endeavor, including being walked past a sniffer dog in pairs. It's worth pointing out that Fiji Airways is not a full member of OneWorld. Rather, they are a OneWorld Connect partner, which means that frequent flyer benefits and lounge access devolves into a complicated matrix of who's a sponsor airline and who's not, and it's a real mess that I don't want to get into. But this brings me to the second annoyance. I have no idea what lounge you'll be able to get into. It's a goddamn mess. I was explicitly told at check-in that I could access the Star Alliance Lounge run by Air New Zealand, which seems counterintuitive since Fiji is a OneWorld Connect airline. Well, they also partner with Air New Zealand. I was explicitly told at check-in that I wouldn't have access to the OneWorld Lounge, except when I went to the OneWorld Lounge, I was happily granted access. I have no idea what your experience will be. Flyer Talk has a thread that is all over the place with conflicting data points about lounge access at LAX. So I'll go ahead and discuss both lounges briefly, since chances are you'll be able to get into at least one of them. The OneWorld Lounge is actually pretty nice. It's shaped as a square donut with a glass shaft in the middle. This does mean that it can feel a bit dark with no outside light. There's a bar with pour your own drinks as well as a bartender, and a spread of both hot and cold food offerings. Nothing was that amazing, but I got some Chinese eggplant and some slaw. The lounge really emptied out as the various Qantas flights left for the night, but as I had one of the last flights out of LAX that night, I had time. So I next made my way over to the Star Alliance Lounge. It was far more crowded. The food spread also wasn't as nice. But there's 2 reasons why I'd prefer to hang out there. There's a large terrace overlooking the inside of the terminal if you want to get some space. But more than that, there's an outdoor deck with fire pits. How cool is that in an airport lounge? There's not much to see at this hour, but this deck definitely is where I'd be hanging out if I had time to kill. It was quite the hike over to the terminal with my aircraft, and I ran into the Fijian crew on the way with their very distinct uniforms. I'm not stalking them, I was just headed the same direction, I swear. Per my boarding pass, boarding was supposed to start at 10:40 p.m., but the gate said 10:50. We didn't actually start boarding until just after 11. I was warmly greeted by name from reading off my boarding pass, and I headed towards my seat. Fiji Airways' A350s have 33 business class seats in a 1-2-1 configuration in 9 rows. These seats should look awfully familiar to folks.
Hey, I've seen this one. This is a classic.
These seats are very popular on carriers ranging from British Airways and American to WestJet and Qatar. In fact, this aircraft was originally meant for Hong Kong Airlines before they ran out of money. I last saw them myself on Air Canada, where I sung the seat's praises. Fiji, though, really adds something with the purple accenting, though I'm sure Air New Zealand may protest the similarities. Because the seats are so common with other airlines, I won't dwell on them too much, but there's 2 storage bins with full power USB and a remote. There's standard seat controls and 2 storage areas, one in the footwell and another under the armrest where the headphones are. I was offered champagne or orange juice and offered a hot towel. There was of course a bottle of Fiji water at the seat. The amenity kit has bombs, eye shades, socks, toothbrush kit, and a really nice pen. I'll get to the bedding and menu a bit later. The captain came on the PA, who sounded Kiwi, who told us that flying time to Nadi would be 10 hours and 20 minutes at 40,000 feet. We taxied towards the runway in the darkness. Rather than filming out the window, I switched on the A350's tail camera. Not only did we take off into the darkness, but we proceeded to race the sun around the globe, still arriving in darkness 2 days later. Let's talk about food and beverage. Meals were taken in the air, including a breakfast card, which I'll get back to later. The wine selection was fairly limited, and while good, nothing really premium was on offer. I mean, Mantua is a good New Zealand white wine that I regularly drink at home. But to be fair, Fiji isn't really a wine destination after all. It was served with what I think was quite literally Chex Mix. This brings me to the food, which I think is the third potential annoyance. I really like the food, but it is, well, Fijian. And chances are you haven't had Fijian food at home before. This was my first time trying it, and the flavors are potentially different from what you expect. Most people went straight to sleep, but I definitely wanted to try the food. Meal service started at around 1 AM LA time. I started with a coconut soup, which was served lukewarm, with rather simple, earthy flavors that were quite unique. Then I ordered the chicken breast. I'll be honest, when I first saw it, it didn't look that great. But wow, that sauce really packed some flavor. Also, it was pretty well cooked. It tasted unlike anything I'd ever had, which makes sense since I've never had Fijian food before. It's not tropical, it's not a Southeast Asian curry, it's something else, in a good way. For dessert, I got the strawberry mascarpone and vanilla parfait. Again, it wasn't exactly what you were expecting. It was only just a tad sweet, far less than the cloying desserts many people perhaps expect. I thought it was a refreshing change of pace, and I noticed in my later meals that Fijian desserts aren't really as sweet as Americans might expect. But I can easily see folks thinking that they forgot to add any sugar at all. Then it was time for bed, and again Fiji really hits it out of the park. Not only is there a comfortable pillow and a light blanket, but they passed out a really comfortable mattress pad and a thicker blanket. United Polaris bedding from Saks Fifth Avenue may still technically be better, but from a comfort perspective, this was very close. I managed to sleep for between 6 and 7 hours, which out of a 10-hour flight is a testament to how comfortable the bedding was, or how tired I was, or both. The cabin was also on the cooler side, which I prefer. As they prepared the breakfast service, let's briefly touch on the Wi-Fi and entertainment. You can get 15 minutes of free messaging, which is nice. Otherwise, packages range from $7.95 to $24.95 with a cap of 500 megabytes. The in-flight entertainment is on a beautiful responsive screen with over 100 movies and a host of TV shows. The moving map is very responsive and customizable, and I find it funny how many times we ended up crossing the international date line. Quite literally 5 times. Even though there's 3 lavatories at the front, there was quite the line in the morning. there's nothing other than some pure Fiji products on offer. This brings me to annoyance number 4, the breakfast service. The service the crew gave this entire flight was extraordinary and really lived up to the famed Fijian hospitality. But with a full cabin all wanting custom breakfast orders, they were simply overwhelmed. I sat up and got my tray table ready well after the service had started. It was 45 minutes to even get a tablecloth. Many folks were already long done by then. I had indicated that I wanted tea served prior to my meal per the breakfast card, which is a really nice touch, but it fell through the cracks. I ended up with my meal and no beverage at all. I ordered the blins, which were good and again far less sweet than perhaps Westerners expect, but I found it quite tasty. Still, with no beverage, I asked for them and they apologetically served me tea and juice after my meal had already been taken away. It was the only real blemish on an otherwise fantastic service from the crew. Then it was time to fill out the landing cards, and thank God for the pen in the amenity kit. The captain came on the PA as we began our descent, warning us that our taxi would be rather slow as they'd need to let the A350's engines cool down before they could be turned off at the gate. We were served a final hot towel and given yet another bottle of Fiji water as the cabin lights were dimmed for landing. Sadly, it was still quite dark as we began our final approach. Then came the 5th annoyance, the music. Many airlines have boarding and deplaning music. Great, helps set the mood. But not many airlines blare music just before landing in the dark. I guess to welcome you to Fiji? I know it's a bit hypocritical of me to say that music can be annoying when I put it in my flight reviews myself, but I found it aggravating. Still, I guess that means that I don't need a song for landing, as long as I don't get a copyright strike for it. My Fiji water went sliding into frame, which I found rather fitting, and I swear wasn't staged. We slowly taxied to the gate, passing an A330 and 737. We deplaned by a single jet bridge, and I found it really cool that the walkways are open to the warm Fijian weather, though sadly I couldn't walk further around to get a better view. We walked around the terminal, past another A330, before being welcomed to the passport area by a live band, who were way too chipper for it being 5 a.m. So Fiji Business Class on the A350. I loved it. Hopefully by now you've formed an opinion on whether you would too, or whether the annoyances are too much of a detraction. Let's think of the competition between North America and Oceania. If you're flying to Fiji itself, well, Fiji is your only option. If you're connecting on to Australia or New Zealand, you need to consider the US airlines Qantas and Air New Zealand. Food and service on Fiji definitely puts it well above the US airlines. I haven't flown Qantas business class myself, but I suspect Fiji also wins there. And Air New Zealand? Yes, the service and food and wine are also great, but the Fiji A350 121 seats beats the crazy odd Air New Zealand seats. Yes, Kiwis, I know, calm down, I'll get back to Air New Zealand later in a future video. But I lied. There's a 6th potential concern. Fiji Airways currently only has 2 of these A350s, with 2 more on order. They have 4 A330s, and they are quite a different experience. The difference, in fact, is night and day. You have every right to be heartbroken if you get an equipment swap. Lucky for you, I also flew that product, so we can definitely make that comparison. So click here to see that video when it goes live. But now, I'm off to the domestic terminal for a truly remarkable flight you can see here, or check out the full playlist of the trip here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.